Imagine this, it's 1992, post-Soviet Russia is in total chaos. Food shortages grip the streets of St. Petersburg. A mid-level city official named Vladimir Putin, fresh out of the KGB, signs off on a massive deal: export $100 million worth of raw materials like oil, timber, and metals in exchange for desperately needed food imports to feed the starving city. The raw materials ship out. The food, it never arrives. Just two railroad cars of cooking oil show up. City investigators dig in, accuse him of incompetence or worse, corruption. His career hangs by a thread. One lawmaker calls it a scandal that could have ended everything before it began. Yet this so-called failed businessman doesn't fade into obscurity. Instead, he climbs, calculated step by calculated step, from the ashes of a collapsing empire to become Russia's iron-fisted strongman for over 2 decades. How did a Leningrad street kid turned KGB lieutenant colonel turn a near-fatal political misstep into the ultimate power play? Today, we are diving deep into Vladimir Putin's calculated rise, the man who went from watching the Berlin Wall crumble in East Germany to rewriting Russia's destiny. Buckle up, because this isn't just a biography. It's a masterclass in survival, strategy, and sheer will in the cutthroat world of post-Soviet politics. Stick around till the end for the lessons that still echo in global headlines today. Let's rewind to the beginning. Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was born on 7 October 1952 in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, into a working-class family scarred by the horrors of World War II. His father, Vladimir Spiridonovich Putin, had been a submariner in the Soviet Navy and later fought in the brutal defense of Leningrad during the Nazi siege, suffering severe wounds that left him disabled. His mother, Maria Ivanovna Putina, worked in a factory and as a cleaner, enduring the same siege where starvation claimed over 1 million lives, including Putin's older brother Viktor, who died of diphtheria as an infant in 1942. The family lived in a cramped communal apartment, a typical Soviet setup where multiple households shared kitchens and bathrooms. Young Vladimir, the youngest of 3 children but the only one to survive infancy in his immediate family, grew up tough. He was a street brawler, by his own admission in later interviews compiled in the 2000 book First Person. He once described himself as a real thug who got into fights constantly until judo and sambo changed his life at age 12. Those martial arts disciplines instilled discipline, respect, and a fighter's mindset that would define him. He trained relentlessly, earning a black belt and competing locally. School was secondary. He read Marx, Engels, and Lenin in his spare time but excelled more in physical pursuits and German language studies at a specialized high school. In 1970, Putin enrolled at Leningrad State University to study law, graduating in 1975 with a thesis on international trade principles. There, he crossed paths with Anatoly Sobchak, a charismatic law professor and future reformist politician who would become his mentor. Putin joined the Communist Party, as was required, and right after graduation, he fulfilled a childhood dream. He walked into the KGB office unannounced and asked to join. They recruited him on the spot. Trained at the KGB's 401st school in Leningrad, he started in counterintelligence before moving to foreign intelligence. By 1985, after advanced training at the Yuri Andropov Red Banner Institute in Moscow, he was posted to Dresden, East Germany, under the cover of a translator. Rising to lieutenant colonel, he liaised with the Stasi, monitored Western visitors, and gathered intelligence on technology and politics. He witnessed the 1989 fall of the Berlin Wall firsthand, crowds storming the streets, the Soviet Empire cracking. In a famous anecdote from first person, Putin called Moscow for orders as protesters approached the KGB building. The response? Silence. I got the feeling that the country no longer existed, he recalled. He burned documents frantically to protect secrets, but later resigned from active duty in 1991, right after the failed August coup against Gorbachev. As soon as the coup began, I immediately decided which side I was on, he said publicly. Back in Leningrad, now St. Petersburg, he took a low-key job at the university's International Affairs Department, recruiting and reporting KGB habits dying hard, while finishing a PhD in economics in 1997, though some later questioned its originality. The Soviet Union collapsed in December 1991. Chaos reigned. Hyperinflation, crime waves, oligarchs looting state assets, and ordinary Russians queuing for bread. Putin, pragmatic and ambitious, reached out to his old professor Anatoly Sobchak, who had become the city's first democratically elected mayor in 1991. Sobchak hired him as an advisor on international affairs in May 1990, then promoted him to head the Committee for External Relations by 1991. This was Putin's real political baptism, and where the failed businessman label was born. In the early 1990s, St. Petersburg faced famine-level shortages. Putin oversaw a barter scheme, export raw materials for food. According to a 2012 investigation by the Bureau of Investigative Journalism and City Council records unearthed by Deputy Marina Saleh, Putin authorized contracts worth over $100 million, some say up to $122 million in raw goods like metals and oil. The deals were signed, goods shipped abroad, but the promised food imports mostly vanished. Investigators found shoddy contracts, inflated prices, and links to shadowy intermediaries. Saleh's commission reported massive discrepancies. One deal allegedly delivered just 2 cars of oil. Putin was summoned, grilled, and nearly fired. Sobchak defended him fiercely, calling the accusations politically motivated. No charges stuck. Putin claimed the chaos of privatization was to blame, and he was just facilitating deals in a lawless transition. Western businessmen who dealt with him described him as efficient, but never openly corrupt. He didn't demand bribes outright, per accounts in books like Masha Jessen's The Man Without a Face. Yet critics, including in later biographies like Catherine Belton's Putin's People, saw it as early evidence of the opaque networks and cronyism that would define his style, deals funneled through trusted associates, loyalty over legality. Putin survived, even thrived, becoming first deputy mayor by 1994. He built alliances, learned to navigate bureaucracy, and quietly expanded his influence through the local Ozero Dacha cooperative, a network of future loyalists. When Sobchak lost re-election in 1996 amid corruption probes, Putin didn't sync with him. He moved to Moscow that August, calling in favors from old contacts. In the capital, under President Boris Yeltsin, Putin's rise accelerated like a carefully plotted chess game. Yeltsin's Russia was a mess. Economic collapse, Chechen wars, oligarchs pulling strings, and the president himself battling health issues and scandals. Putin started as deputy chief of the Presidential Property Management Department, overseeing the handover of Soviet assets. By 1997, he headed the main control directorate, auditing government efficiency. In 1998, Yeltsin appointed him director of the FSB, the KGB's successor. Putin restructured it ruthlessly, purging disloyal elements and restoring its clout. That July, he became Secretary of the Security Council. Then, in August 1999, Yeltsin named him acting Prime Minister, the fifth in 18 months. Few saw it coming. Putin was a grey bureaucrat, not a flashy politician. But he had the Siloviki, security services insiders, behind him, and Yeltsin's inner circle, including oligarchs like Boris Berezovsky, viewed him as controllable. The turning point. The September 1999 apartment bombings in Moscow and other cities, killing over 300. Blamed on Chechen terrorists, though conspiracy theories persist about FSB involvement, Putin launched the Second Chechen War with iron resolve. His blunt promise, "We'll wipe them out in the outhouse," resonated with a public craving order after Yeltsin's drunken chaos. Ratings soared from single digits to over 60% by year's end. On 31st December 1999, Yeltsin resigned dramatically on TV, anointing Putin as acting president. "I have decided to resign," Yeltsin said, handing over the nuclear codes. Putin granted Yeltsin immunity from prosecution, a calculated loyalty move. In March 2000, Putin won the presidency with 53% of the vote, promising stability, economic reform, and a crackdown on chaos. His early presidency was the rise phase perfected. He inherited a broken nation. GDP had halved since 1991, life expectancy plummeted, oligarchs like Mikhail Khodorkovsky and Vladimir Gazinsky controlled TV stations and industries. Putin moved fast. He created 7 federal districts with Kremlin-appointed envoys to centralize power. What he called the vertical of power. Governors lost direct elections, he nominated them. Tax reforms, a flat 13% income tax, and riding the 2000s oil boom delivered growth, averaging 7% annually. Debt was repaid by 2005. He tamed the oligarchs, those who played ball, like Roman Abramovich, kept empires. Defiant ones faced ruin. Berezovsky exiled, Gazinsky fled, Khodorkovsky arrested in 2003 on fraud charges and later imprisoned for a decade. In his own words from a 2007 interview, Putin positioned this as restoring state control. "We are seeing a greater and greater disdain for the principle of sovereignty from the West, but Russia would stand firm." He courted the Orthodox Church, rebuilt the military, and projected strength, shirtless horseback photos, judo demos, even piloting fighter jets. Public interviews painted him as the everyman tough guy, a judoka who loved classical music and history. By 2004, he won re-election with 71%. As Prime Minister under Dmitry Medvedev from 2008 to 2012, due to term limits, he orchestrated the Russo-Georgian War in 2008, asserting influence in the near abroad. But peaks breed controversies. Putin's rule consolidated into authoritarianism. Critics called sovereign democracy elections as theater, media state-controlled, opposition crushed. The 2004 Beslan school siege and Nordost theater crisis saw heavy-handed responses with massive civilian casualties. Human rights groups documented Chechen War atrocities, torture, disappearances, yet Putin framed it as anti-terrorism victory. Oligarch crackdowns were popular at home but signaled selective justice. By 2011 to 2013, protests erupted over rigged parliamentary elections. Putin blamed foreign agents, passing foreign agent laws that stifled NGOs. His 2012 return as president, after swapping with Medvedev, sparked more unrest. The 2014 annexation of Crimea, following Ukraine's Euromaidan revolution. Boosted his ratings to 89%, framed as protecting ethnic Russians and reversing historical injustice. But it triggered Western sanctions, economic hits, and the Donbas conflict. Books like Philip Short's Putin, His Life and Times, and Belton's reporting detail how Siloviki networks, former KGB allies, funneled state assets, creating a system of loyal billionaires. Controversies mounted: Alexei Navalny's poisoning in 2020, imprisonment, and 2024 death in an Arctic penal colony, election fraud allegations, constitutional changes in 2020 resetting term limits, potentially letting him rule until 2036. The full-scale 2022 invasion of Ukraine, justified in a February address as denazification and protecting Russian speakers, echoing his 2021 essay on historical unity, drew global condemnation, ICC warrants, and sanctions. Casualties soared into hundreds of thousands. Russia pivoted to China, Iran, North Korea. Domestically, war propaganda, conscription, and dissent crackdowns intensified. Yet approval hovered high, per state polls, as he cast himself as defender against NATO encirclement. Putin's legacy. A Russia transformed, stabilized from 1990s collapse, with restored pride, nuclear parity, and energy leverage. Poverty dropped, infrastructure boomed on oil wealth. He modernized the military, annexed territory, and challenged US dominance, forging a multipolar world. In interviews, like his 2007 Munich speech, he railed against unipolar hegemony. The West broke promises post-Cold War. Supporters hail him as the man who ended humiliation, revived the Orthodox Church, and made Russia a great power again. But critics, from Anna Politkovskaya's reporting to Yeltsin's analysis, see a kleptocratic mafia state, suppressed freedoms, rigged courts, brain drain, and isolation. Life expectancy rebounded but inequality widened. Wars in Chechnya, Georgia, Ukraine cost tens of thousands of Russian lives and global standing. Lessons from his rise. Calculation over charisma, build quiet networks, seize crisis, like 1999 bombings or 2014 Ukraine. Project strength while adapting, from reformer to conservative traditionalist. He turned a food scandal into a footnote, a grey KGB man into a global icon. In a world of uncertainty, Putin's playbook shows how discipline, loyalty, and timing can forge empires from failure. Russia under him is no democracy, but for many citizens, it's no longer the bankrupt wreck of the 90s. Whether that's progress or peril depends on where you stand, but one thing's clear. This failed businessman scripted one of history's most improbable power plays. What do you think, genius strategist or authoritarian architect? Drop your thoughts below, like if this breakdown hit hard, and subscribe for more untold stories of power. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.